because we're more than just an industry. We're a family.
Cryer Malt was founded with beer in hand to simply unite people who love craft beer.
You brewers are the lifeblood of Cryer Malt, so we want to say that we're here for you, no matter what. Cheers.
The Cryer Malt team, along with our supply partners, have been working round the clock to make sure we can provide you with the very best ingredients for top-notch brews.
Because that's what family is for, to be there through the tough times and through the good.
Some of our best memories have been made over a few pints at the pub.
Can't wait to catch up over a cold one once this is over, but we're still enjoying your beers until then.
So from the hop farms in the Pacific Northwest,
from the rolling barley fields in Germany,
and the Great Scottish Highlands here in the UK.
And the barley paddocks down under.
From the crags of Colorado.
And from your local maltsters in Australia, we'd like to say,
we're here so you can keep making your best beer. Cheers.
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 Slanjava.
cheers.
cheers!
Cheers.
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 Hello everyone and welcome to the new product development panel chat presented here by Cryer Malt. My name is Luke Robertson from the Independent Brewers Association and Good Beer Week. This is part of the Cryer Malt Virtual Trade Hub series that we are running. We've got 3 events coming up tomorrow as well. If you head to goodbeerweek.com.au and click on the Trade Hub link, you can see all about them, as well as all the other great events that we've got going on. But for now, I'm going to throw to John Burridge from Cryer Malt, who's going to introduce our panel to talk all about new product development. John, how are you?
And thank you for the intro. Great to be here and good to be a part of the panel. As you said, today's panel is about new product development. So we've brought in some of the country's best and also diverse range of brewers to help talk to you about new product development. First disclaimer is that there is obviously no right or wrong when it comes to this department, and we just basically decided to get some brewers together and get their thoughts, their opinions, and some of the experiences on how they go about new product development. And rather than me waffle on too much, I'll let them introduce themselves. So we might start off with Jane.
Hey, Jane Lewis, Two Birds Brewing, co-owner, head brewer, although that doesn't feel quite right for what I do these days. But yeah, new product development based in Melbourne.
Cool, thanks for that, Jane. And across to Mitch.
So Mitch Pickford from up here in Brisbane, Range Brewing, the head of brewing and production up here.
Nice work there, Mitch. And also Chris Farmer.
Yeah, Chris Farmer, Mr. Banks Brewery in Melbourne, owner and semi-brewer.
Beautiful. And lucky last, Greg.
Good day, everyone. Greg Hall, Brick Lane Brewing, Head of Brands and Innovation here in Melbourne.
Nice work there, team. Now, we're going beautifully there. We've got the intros out of the way, but everyone forgot to put in their nickname. I'm happy to start off. My nickname is Budgie, for those of you that didn't know. Jane?
I don't really have one.
Disagree. I found that out the other day. The Brewer Bird. Yeah, nah. Mitch?
Mine's just Pick. It's a pretty simple one.
There we go. Chris?
Yeah, again, very simple. Farms or farmer or anything farm related.
Nice. And Greg?
I'll go with the theme. Mine's Hawley.
Hawley. Jeez, we're all surname influenced. So, Jane, we'll just call you Louis. How's that?
Yep, sounds fine.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for joining us today, team. We're going to keep this pretty loose and just move through what is some sort of a preset agenda. But we'll jump straight in, and it is quite a big beast, new product development. And as I said before, there are no rights or wrongs, but you guys have all got some good background and in this department. And I think we might just start off, go around the room and sort of explain how it is that you go about NPD in your breweries. So, if Jane, you want to take it away?
Yep. So I guess probably it starts out for us deciding what kind of product we're going to work on, whether it's an ongoing range product or a just a limited release product, and that'll kind of determine a fair bit for us around how we want to go with it. In terms of if it was a limited release product, we're a lot looser. It's kind of what's inspiring you, what's working for you, what makes sense, and then working out some way to kind of package that up and send it out to the world. So it's much freer from my perspective when I'm looking at a limited release product. If I'm looking at an ongoing range product, obviously you need to have a bit more consideration around how it's going to fit into the range, what that kind of beer is going to be, what ingredients you want to use. Ongoing continuity of supply is always the first thing that you need to look at in my mind with that sort of stuff. If you're going to make an ongoing range beer, then you need to make sure that you can get, I'm going to say this not because you're here, John, but because you need to make sure you can get hops. It can be a really tough situation to make sure you've got ongoing supply of that stuff. So taking that into consideration right at the very beginning before deciding that because I've done this before, I've made a whole new beer and realised I can't get a hold of any of the hops and just going, okay, well, that's straight back to the drawing board again. So taking that all into account at the start. That's probably a start enough for everyone to kind of roll on from there.
Cool. Mitch, how does new product development in a nutshell work up at Range Brewing, mate?
I think it's quite a bit different to Jane's, as we don't have a core range of beers at all. We've been open for 2 years, and I think we've brewed the same beer maybe 3 times overall in those 2 years. So I think I checked the other day, and we've done 178 different beers in 2 years. So it's pretty full on. So essentially our life is like new product development, and that may mean that we are brewing similar styles of beer and we are developing that one product, but there's different aspects of it. So for us, we look at in our brewing, we're big users of hops. We like to experiment with yeast strains, but it all comes back to our beer styles. So we want to attack beer styles themselves and then impart our own, way of life or way of thinking and process onto them. So for us to do that, our development has to be continual, and that's for the way we look at it. We look at it not in the aspect of we need these ingredients to make that beer. We need these hops to make that beer. We're like, well, can we use these hops? Can we develop something else? Can we use the hops or the ingredients in a different way to still make that beer the way we want it to? So we are pretty loose in the way we do things, but it also at the same time, we'd like to see progress in the styles of beer that we're doing. So for us and our hazy beers, I think over the course of the last 2 years, from where they started to where they are now, if I got to see one at the start and one in the final product now, the new product development in that alone, just that one style of beer would have been, 90 different characteristics that have changed, and all for the better. So it's pretty cool. It's a bit different for us, but we like the way we do things, so a bit fun.
Nicely said. I think I've gone from one end of the spectrum to the complete opposite. So, Chris, where does Mr. Banks sit on the NPD range?
We're probably more similar these days to what Mitch and the guys up there are doing. We do have a core range, but it's now a very small core range made up of 2 beers. So, and that is a lot to do with the whole contracting of hops. We've been stuck with amounts that we've over-contracted previously and stuff like that. So, but with new product development in general, it's pretty simple. It's, a lot of trial and error and figuring out what works sort of best on our system, what we sort of like out and about. We try and get overseas every couple of years and see where they're at, just to sort of try to keep in front of the game a little bit, especially the States and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a lot of, again, similar. We make a lot of IPAs, and it might be just changing, it might look like you're just changing certain hops, but, you're changing a lot more than that, in the background with slight malt tweaks, or even just little things like different mash temperatures and stuff like that, just to get those beers to sort of exactly or as close to where you want them to be. So, we're pretty simple with it in the fact that we try it, and if it works, we continue, or we, keep going to try and get better at that position. But it's not a largely thought out process.
Now, to a brewery just up the road, Greg at Brick Lane, before you tell us a bit about NPD, is it true that your title is the main man about new product development?
Well, I would want to say it's an official title, but I pull people up on it all the time, but, they keep using it. So, what am I do? I don't know. It's kind of is my remit. I mean, that's my background. I was at CB for about 10 years and, had a lot of experience driving NPD and, helping, not just come up with ideas, generating them and, helping the whole business commercialize them. So that's kind of what I sort of be grounded in. I listen to you guys talk, and, I don't have the luxury of saying that I actually can brew, and I've probably never brewed a product in my life. And, my remit and my role is a little bit different. It's a bit more marketing focused, and it's a bit more, how do we provide a showcase for the beers that we make? I guess the next question is, how do we go about it? We're a pretty small brewery, we're about a year and a half in. We just, have a massive appetite to, sort of, do more, sort of prove our stripes a little bit. We've got the very fortunate benefit of having, a tremendous brewer with John. And, my role is to really, sort of pat our heads and rub our tummies at the same time and just make as much new beer as possible, and get that up and get out the system. Since in my time I've been here, we've launched an IPA, and more recently a sour beer just about to come off the press. And the process has been sort of opportunistic in a way that, just push against the open door. And there's so many great beers to be made in the world. How do you make a choice? And, if the brewers have got a great idea, then we'll have a push at that. I came here, IPA was already been made. I had to just put a skin on it. If the sales guys have an appetite for something, we try and respond to that brief. And just, where there's a hunger and appetite, we try and make it happen for everybody. And we just try and do it in a way that, is fun and engaging as best as we can. We just try and, be really organic and fluid, and not just about making the beer, but making a culture where it's easy to make more beer. I guess we just try and get drawn to where we feel there's good energy for things, and we sort of try and run hard at it.
That's fantastic. And mate, I'm sure for the sake of the listeners, great to hear that you saw the light and got on board the independent beer movement, mate. You certainly won't regret that choice. It must have been great to hear the sentiments of the panel talking about ingredient sourcing, because if I got $1 for every time a brewer got hold of a Nelson, a Galaxy, or a Citra, thinking that it's readily available in mass volumes, to put it into a beer, only to find that they can only scrape together a small amount, it's heartbreaking from a supplier's point of view to shatter someone's dreams when they chase 500 kilos and you can only give them 5. So it's great to hear that some brewers have got that at their mind. Now, one thing, it was interesting listening to the diversity of everyone's approach to NPD, but it seems to be we draw inspiration from a number of areas, and I think it'd be great to hear from all of you as to where do you find the inspiration to come up with these new ideas, opportunity, products. Jane, fire away.
Look, inspiration for me comes a lot either from food. So there's a lot of stuff around, going out for going out for a meal at a restaurant is probably the best way that I come up with ideas, cheapest way as well. Hopping on a plane as well, so being able to see what's going on in different parts of the world. And then, a lot around music as well. So whatever I'm listening to often inspires what I want to make. So we've done a number of beers around different musicians, and that's something that really works for me, that I really love playing with.
Fantastic. And I think both Mitch and Chris, you guys have already alluded to it, but you guys seem to get a lot of inspiration from the US side of things. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about how you go about that?
I'll go first. From the US, I guess for us, when we first started out, we kind of had this model in our head that we never wanted to do core beers, and we'd taken a lot of inspiration from companies like Cloudwater in the UK, Two Wall, and then over in the US, Other Half and The Veil and people like that. So for us, those guys pushed boundaries, and they sort of set the benchmark on where we want to be, and what we want to do and what we want to create. So inspiration wise, we take a lot from breweries that we respect. Modern Times is another one. I think they're phenomenal. Breweries that we respect, and we like to sort of gravitate towards their philosophies as well. And then we take sort of our own mentality towards it, and that's pushing people's perceptions of what they're actually drinking. People, we've released a few beers recently from an oat cream IPA or stuff, and if I had said that to people 2 years ago, they would have called me a maniac. But people now are just going, great, sounds good, creamy, fruity, delicious, low bitterness. What is this? Most people won't call that an IPA, but for us, it's about pushing what people can actually perceive when they're drinking. So for us, it's about finding that balance, taking our inspiration from other places and then bringing ourselves into it. That's probably the best way I could describe it.
Yeah, so similar to Mitch, as I said before, trips overseas and to see what everyone else is doing, because hugely gain inspiration from not just the States, even New Zealand and stuff like that. But then also, as Jane was saying, from food and wine and other sorts of things in those areas. But then even simply, as much as I personally get a lot, I'm sort of podcast obsessed. So I listen to just everything and try and take it in like a sponge. And then I don't know, some of those ideas that I even just hear people talk about, I'm like, shit, I want to try that. So we just try and figure out the best way that we can sort of do something that's not copying, but like our take on it, I suppose.
Fantastic. And Greg, obviously down at Brick Lane, we see a lot of, I suppose, interest / opportunities with some of the partners in the Brick Lane conglomerate. Do you want to elaborate a bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, we're very lucky to have a great brew that we're able to share with other brewers, and and through that process, I think we get exposed to a broader range of thinking. We're very grateful to have the opportunity to brew for. We made some motorcycle oil and with the guys at Hop Nation. So, I mean, having those guys trust us to make their beer is just fabulous, and they help us sort of frame our own expectations. And I mean, for me, to be honest, I came out of CB. I made what most people on this forum would probably say is pretty boring mainstream beer for a whole bunch of people, and so I sort of stand in awe at the possibilities of what craft can be. And I think craft beer is a reflection on culture, and it's probably one of the last things that we as individuals sort of get to have for ourselves. It's a little celebration of our own time, and unlike with Mitch, I think I'm inspired by other breweries, like Cloudwater and Firestone Walker and Garage Project. How those guys just push the boat and have so much fun as humanly possible with beer. And I kind of think what better way to contribute is just to try and make the most awesomest beer you could possibly imagine. yeah, it's exciting times, I think, being in this category.
Fantastic. Now, we talk about inspiration and also opportunity. I think the two sort of have a bit of a meeting ground. Has anyone got some examples of where an opportunity has arisen, be it through a third party or a business opportunity to create a product for said reason?
Yeah, Chris and I actually did one together. So we went through a mutual bar, like a purveyor of ours, Mr. West in Melbourne, and they kind of came to both of us, came to Range and Mr. Banks, and sort of wanted to bring us all together and do a three-way collab. So that was an awesome opportunity, and brought about purely by one of our good beer suppliers, and that's something that's developed a really good connection between Chris and myself. Like, this is actually not unusual for us to be talking to each other. We do it quite a lot, and we did that sometime last year, and like we've been friends ever since, and been able to go back and forth ever since, and actually learned quite a lot from each other. So that was like one of the best opportunities we've had since we opened in like the Australian market, for sure. And we definitely have some from overseas from our previous work history and stuff, but like that's something that can happen quite easily in this community, because it is, especially in Australia, it is pretty small compared to overseas, but we are quite spread out. So it mightn't happen as often as other countries, but when we get the opportunity, it's usually pretty awesome, because at the end of the day, like, we are Aussies and we like to stick together. We like to have a beer together, and we have a good laugh and a good talk. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, Jane, I know you also had a partnership. Do you want to talk a bit more about the Western Bulldogs beer? Because that was a pretty exciting project. I'm not sure where it derived from, but it was good.
Had a partnership might be the best way to put it, but that's totally fine. So yeah, look, that was probably one of the coolest things I've ever got to do. So we made a beer for the AFLW Western Bulldogs team. I'm a Bulldogs supporter, so obviously being able to support the women's team was something that really resonated with me. I know I'm a crier, but I did shed a tear while I was drinking a can of Trailblazer Lager, watching the first game that was served up. Yeah, so that was something that was really important to us. Sadly enough, it's something that we don't have anymore, but I will never regret the opportunity to be able to do something like that.
Yeah, it was a fantastic. Really broke some new ground in a great relationship that went across industry. So that was one that definitely got the attention of a lot of people, both in the beer and sporting industries. So well done for that. And also, Greg, I know you guys have done a bit of work in that sort of department as well. Do you want to talk a bit more about that?
Just recently, yeah, we were fortunate to partner with Ben Cowan Sellers to come together as obviously Mr. Banks was with the Altogether Hazy IPA. So just giving fresh perspectives and fresh insights to how we go about our beers. Tremendous to be able to do things that we hadn't done before, and just to have a launch runway to bring something new to market in a really quick space of time. And it's just tremendous to be part of a good cause. And we rolled in a bit of a collaboration with Shane Dahlia and to hand out meals as part of that, which is just been a really tight little bundle of how, when everyone can sort of pull together in a bit of a tough time, we can do stuff. So yeah, it's been good. It's been great.
I think the one theme I see here is that opportunities and inspiration can come from numerous areas, and it's great to see. And I think any idea can potentially have the legs. It's just a matter of investigating it and following it through. On top of that, there's going to be a boundary at some point, because breweries have sort of like a brand plan or brand guidelines, which when it comes to the point you've got to release a new beer or a new opportunity presents, I might start with yourself, Jane. How do you go about bringing an overzealous opportunity into a brand plan that works for you?
Look, I'm usually the overzealous one in all of this, and my business partner Danielle is usually the one who has to try to, kind of remind me that things need to conform into certain parts of the brand. So, yeah, look, it's an ongoing conversation that we've been having is how to make things fit, and I guess we look for sort of the pillars of our brand. With things like obviously the Western Bulldogs, things we're obviously massive supporters of women. We believe very strongly in the western suburbs of Melbourne, and we want to sort of indulge in creativity and inspiration and those kind of things. So I guess we look to how everything's going to fit in regards to that, and if we can get it to fit into one pillar, then that sort of works. But then there's also plenty of occasions where it's like, I don't really care. I just need to make this thing. It just makes sense to me. It's in my brain. I can wake up in the morning and have a full recipe written with the design done, with the way everything should look, with what the launch party should look like. And sometimes it's like, I'm sorry, it doesn't make any sense, but we just have to kind of do it. And I guess that's the place for things like our limited releases where we can just go, it's fine, hang it. We're just going to go out and do this particular thing because it works.
It's a good point, and I'm going to pass it over to Chris in a second, because if there's one bloke that I know is the epiphany of fuck it, let's have a crack. Chris, some of the beers that you've produced, mate, just are mind blowing, and I'm not saying that there's no thought going in behind them, but your ability to adapt and just throw it to the wind and set sail and see what happens is just extraordinary, mate. Yeah, hats off for that, and tell us more.
Thanks, mate. I feel like we used to have more of a brand plan than we do now, especially with everything going on at the moment. We were sort of really strict with, we had our sort of 2 core and then sort of seasonals, but then limiteds on top of that. And we'd only do one in-house and then 2 wholesale a month. With like in specialties, with obviously COVID and everything that's happened now, it's kind of thrown everything out the window, and we're literally just doing some form of specialty every week this at the moment. So that's kind of thrown our brand plan out. But I think once we even come out of this, for us, it's, I don't know, we're a very small brewery. We've got the opportunity and I suppose the ease to be able to do what you said and literally just throw everything at it and give it a crack. And if it doesn't work, then we have standards, and if it doesn't work, it goes down the drain. It's not very often that does happen, but it does occasionally happen. But I don't know, I think within the brand plan, it's pretty easy to say we just want to make really good beer, and by throwing everything at it and crazy ingredients and stuff like that, I think it's also for us personally about using real ingredients. We don't use extracts in any form, never have, and I don't think we ever will. So if we want to use vanilla, we pay somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 for vanilla to put in a beer, and then because we just put 5 kilos of vanilla into a stout that we were doing earlier today, and that's expensive. But I think if you want those bigger, richer flavors, and you want people to be paying those sort of prices, you got to give them the full experience in a way. So we're just we are trying to push the boundaries a little bit with some things, but it's still got to be drinkable. It's still beer at the end of the day. So
it's awesome. I suppose going from that to the other side, Greg, your time at CUB, you would have seen a very conservative approach, I suppose, towards some of that new product development and very structured guidelines on how it is to be done. Your transition to Brick Lane, how does that? Do you see the transition there, or what's the verdict?
I think for me, getting innovation up is all about collectively bringing everyone together onto that journey. And CUB is like a big, it's a big bureaucracy. You learn a lot of skills. I think you can take the principles of of those mechanics and just simplify them. And often it just means having an honest conversation with the sales and the brewers about what we want to do and why we want to do it. I mean, we've still got our training wheels on as a brewery, so we've got a pretty voracious appetite to do new things, and we feel we're only really limited by our own imagination in terms to brew things and bring them to life and to sell them. So, like the ideas come from everyone, and we just try and work together as a team to try and, because if the sales guys like it, you have a runway that can sell your minimum tank, and you're sort of out the door. And then it gives John the latitude to be more creative and to spend more on cogs to make it taste wonderful. So, and sort of my role is to sort of herd the sheep and herd the cats and put a pretty label on the end of it. It helps make people believe that it is the best vanilla stout in the world. I think, but essentially, like, the idea is it has to be awesome. Like, people have to look at it. To what Chris said, they have to go, "Wow, man, this is like a vanilla stout, and I'm going to pay 10 or 12 or what bucks for a big can of it." And I think that's our role, is to, bring that to the people, because they haven't had it, they haven't seen it, and we're there to help them believe it, because we know that when they get there, they're going to be amazed and their eyes are going to be wide open, and they're going to realise that beer's more reliable, more consistent, more refreshing than some of the other categories that you can have on the weekend in alcohol. And so I think it's great to be part of this community, and I think collectively, as we all make ourselves better, we'll bring more people into the category, willing to pay more and do it more. And yeah, that's all comes back to the single thing. It has to be awesome. If it's not awesome, don't get out of bed, because you're wasting your time. It'd be nothing.
That's a good point. The quality of beer is always at the forefront. You raise a good point, though. Obviously, there's multiple facets to a brewery, and when you go to market with a new product, you've got a sales team that want to obviously push some sales. You've got an accountant that obviously doesn't want you to go crazy on ingredients, except for Chris, mate. You go as crazy as you want. How do you go about tying all these different opinions and requirements in to actually, like, there's got to be some absolute ripping arguments in boardrooms of breweries saying, no, I want a triple IPA. Well, no, that's going to be too expensive. You're only getting a single IPA. How do you go about resolving that internal conflict, or not conflict, I suppose, unrest? Any experience, any guide on that from anybody?
I live with my accountant, so we generally fight at home. So we get it all out of the way then, and then, I come to work and tell the boys this is what we're doing. So
yeah, look, I mean, there's a lot of stakeholders in that situation. You're right, Burridge. And look, I mean, everyone's just got their own point of view of how something needs to go. So the accountant needs it, so the sales team needs it to come in at X unit price, so that the retailer or the on-prem can get, okay, they want their markup here. So from there, it's like, okay, cool, we know it's going to cost us this much to make it. We know that we've got these costs in order to get it out, and we can kind of work it back down the other way and then go, well, that's fine. If you want it at that price, I can't make you this beer. And that's sometimes the way we go. It's like, okay, if we do come up and we go, well, this is what we need from a raw material cost, so we're sitting up here, you guys want it to be down here, we either have to change what the beer is or we have to put the price up. So it's sort of, we can come at it from totally different directions, and we often will, or often it'll be, okay, cool, so this is the beer that I've got, this is what it's going to cost. The guys go away and go, okay, cool, we have to charge that, that's going to be fine, go for it. Yeah, it's just managing everybody's sides of it, I guess.
Sounds like we almost need like a new product development tribunal, so that when there's any internal discrepancies, we can send it to a tribunal.
Yes, that would be so good.
Cool, Cryer Malt. There you go. There's the company plug. Now, I suppose everyone's going to be driven to different reasons and methods as to why, but a challenging question in 3 words, or what are 3 fundamentals that your brewery puts at the forefront of new product development? Jane, you look to be struggling on that question already, so we'll go to Mitch. What are 3 fundamentals, mate, that when you're designing a new beer, what are the 3 things that you're sort of popping out and going, no, it must do this, it must do that, and it must provide this?
So for us, it's probably purpose, flavour, and balance. So like there's got to be a purpose behind the beer. It's usually getting onto that last conversation with everyone bumping heads. It's usually Matt coming to me with a crazy idea, going, I want to do this, and then I go, all right, I'll figure it out, and I will. And then I'll come to Jared and be like, hey Jared, this is what this is gonna cost us. And he just goes, all right, I'll do the finalization, and then we'll go, oh crap. But if it has purpose, if it has balance, and if it has flavor, we know people are gonna follow that, and people are gonna come back to us every single time if we can keep ticking those off. And Matt just put something up on the board for me. He said, juice, juice, juice. And that's essentially his answer to everything. More juice all the time.
Fantastic. Any others on that one? That was well said, by the way. That wasn't on the actual script, so you've come in hot on that one. Anybody else got 3 fundamentals that are at the forefront when NPD?
For me, I think, I'm very sympathetic to those ideas. There's this idea in my head that I have, which is the brand exchange. And that's when people drink the beer in their hand and they look at it, it needs to deliver. It needs to be fabulous. And so product quality and getting the best expression of what that beer is supposed to be is great. And whether it's a core range or a seasonal or a special, whatever that might be, it's just, you've just got to make it as best as you can. And just price it accordingly, and just you got to give yourself the freedom to, manage people's expectations. That if it's going to be super deluxe, then you've just got to have packaging and a launch runway that reflects that. So I think anything's possible. You just need to manage everyone's expectations to, quality versus price versus market runway. Yeah.
And over to Chris.
Yeah, I'd say quality 100% is number 1, and then drinkability. Even with some of those ridiculously out there beers, we still want people to be able to drink at least 1 full can of them. And then it does also have to be affordable, but affordable is different depending on the beer it is. Is it affordable if you put it up next to a pale ale for a double IPA? Maybe not, but is it affordable against other double IPAs? Then they're probably the 3 things for us, because we're not here to get rich. We're just here to make some good beer.
Enjoy the ride while we're on it. Jane, have you?
Yeah, I've finally
regained. Okay, nicely done. Far away.
Yeah, I mean, quality. Obviously, it can't be emphasised enough. You've got to make good beer, and if you don't, then don't release it. Pretty much. Aligning expectations. So kind of similar to what Greg was saying, I think it's really important to let the customer know what it is they're getting, because I think the customer has the greatest experience when you tell them what they're getting and they get what they're signing up for. I think mislabeling things is a really big thing that happens a lot, and I think it's really dangerous for the industry as a whole. So aligning expectations and then fun. I mean, that's the whole point of it, right? It's not brain surgery, and so the whole idea, I think, in all of this is that we're doing it to just have a bit of fun. So hopefully for the brewers and the consumer.
That's a great point. Finishing on fun is a good way to round that one up. Now, I'm just going to duck across. We've got a question from Veronica in the chat room in regards to obviously new product development during this COVID-19 situation. We've seen a huge shift to packaged product rather than the kegs on tap. Adapting obviously to the market, is anyone got a point in case of how they've done that given the circumstances of the past couple of months in the situation?
I mean, I'm not sure what you guys make, but our little tank is 50, which means basically 500 cases. So people are at home stuck watching Netflix, looking to do new things. We're looking at it as an opportunity to just do more. And when we come out of this, hopefully soon, we're all hurting now, but we want to be ready to hit the ground running. So we're trying to do more now. And just make the most of the time and, try and, make enough beer to sell out of a tank is kind of the idea. So we just do more, get better at it, use the time more wisely.
Chris, you were mentioning a bit before, you're releasing a beer almost every day. Is that something normal, or is that something this situation has brought about?
Yeah, almost every week, at least one. Every day would be nice.
Sorry, mate.
I know,
typical overzealous supplier.
It's definitely ramped up. We normally would do maybe two to three a month, and now it's sort of more 4 to 6 a month. So yeah, no, it's definitely not normal. We were more predominantly pack than keg anyway, so that didn't take a huge toll on us personally, which I'm really thankful for. I think coming out of it though, we'll probably fill more into cans just going forward though. I don't know. I think it's going to take a while, obviously, as everyone does, for it to get back to normal. And then, I think drinking at home, enjoying at home might be a bit more of a thing than it was in the past. So
awesome. And we're going to move on to Mitch on the next one because, mate, I've seen queues around the corner, sellouts within, I don't know, an hour of some of the beers you're producing, and to yourself as well there, Chris. That's obviously, this follows on a bit of a thread in the questions on YouTube, so thanks for those. The success of these new releases, that's pretty motivational. Is that sort of got you thinking, hey, maybe we should change things up a little bit and stick with this model a bit longer?
Well, it's funny, like, if people keep saying to us, like, how are you going? Like, we get a lot of people going, how are you guys going? And we're like, well, honestly, we're actually making more beer now than we were before. We were on the trajectory to be doing this, but we were fortunate enough when we first set out, we wanted to have an online presence of our own. So we set up an online bottle shop 2 years ago when we started out, and we've just been progressively working on it. And then a year ago, we bought our own canning line. So we haven't had the drawback of like trying to sell our beer, like start a website or get someone else in to can our beer. We've always had that. So for us, it was just a quick switch, put everything into cans instead of kegs, and release more online. There has been some crazy stuff. We sold out of a beer. We released a beer a few weeks ago, and opposite to Greg, our biggest tank is 24 hectoliter, and our smallest tank is 12. So we sold a 12 hectoliter tank of a double IPA in 4 minutes online, which is not the whole thing. We always put like a third of our beer on our online store. But like for us, we just can't, we don't have enough tanks. Like we don't have enough space in our brewery, which is a good thing, I guess. It's a good position to be in, but it also, with what's going on right now, like it puts it into perspective, like how we're going compared to how other people are going. And the legwork we put in at the start to create the brand and create the company that we wanted to, and that's put us in the position that we're in. And thankfully we have an awesome community of drinkers all around Australia, and especially locally, that have just kept going no matter what, even through this all, which has been fantastic.
Well said, mate. I think some of the innovation that I've personally seen across Australia from the brewers in the industry has been phenomenal, and the way this industry has really moved with the times has been it's been exceptional. Putting that aside for a second, Jane, if I was to put my cynical, grumpy old man boots on, would I state that we're creating a bit of a rotation nation here, and these constant new beers are going to be the way of the future?
Yeah, look, it's a really hard one, and it's one that I guess we sort of, I think everyone talks about a fair bit, is what does it look like? Obviously, on one side of things, you've got consumers. You've got to give them what they want. That's sort of the main part of it. Are we kind of continuing to feed that? Who knows? But also, if you don't, then where are you? Because if you're not continuing to offer those new products, we probably have a foot in both camps. Obviously, we have our ongoing range. And then we have the limited releases that are kind of appealing to that market as well. And without that new market, that's really where the growth is. That's really where there's a lot of units being moved. So you can't ignore it, or you can ignore it at your peril, I believe. And yeah, you kind of can't not feed it, and you can't not get involved in it. And I think that's probably part of what we're seeing, even in. If you look at smaller brands, they're doing it. You look at bigger brands, they're doing it. It just doesn't seem to be. It's just the way that we're going, I believe.
So the age-old mentality that I was brought up on of 4 core range beers and 2 seasonals has gone completely out the window as I drink this, I don't know, triple IPA hazy.
Nationally distributed,
nationally distributed,
yeah, footprint, absolutely, yep.
Hey, look, I think
you and me both, mate.
I think the way brewers learn and adapt, and Greg said it before, it's got to have quality. It's got to excite people, and that brings more people to the realm. The industry's growing. It's come a long way, and it's just great to see. It reminds me of these sort of trends that have come through new product development. There's been obviously collaborations with barrel makers for barrel aging. There's been collaborations between breweries. We've seen collaborations with suppliers and agricultural producers. Collaborations, are they ongoing? Are they going to morph? Has anyone got a collaboration coming up, or one in the progress that can sort of give us some indicative of what is going to happen to collaborations?
I might jump in on this one. Something that's like, as I was just saying earlier, like Chris and I happened to do a collaboration middle of last year, and our ongoing collaboration has just been our friendship and going back and forth and helping educate each other and learning from each other. And I think that's a huge part of the European scene and the American scene that we don't get as much over here in Australia. I think there's been this sort of hold everything to the chest a lot more in the past, and only in the last couple of years we're seeing it. Everyone open up a bit more and help each other develop, not just themselves. For us, we did a collab recently with a company called Track, and they brew out of Cloudwaters Brewery in Manchester. And like they were meant to be in Australia for a Carl & Sellers event, and they were meant to come to Brisbane and do the collab with us, but obviously couldn't fly here. So we did it all over emails, just back and forth, doing the recipe, getting some of their ideas, how they make beer, getting some of ours, blending them together. And then we worked on the design for the can label together. And we released that here. And now we're actually doing the same with them over there. So they're going to release one in like 2 weeks over there that we've collabed on. So I definitely think collaborations can be ongoing. And I'd love to see more of it in Australia, like more people getting out there and chatting with each other and being more open with how they're doing and what they're doing in their breweries.
Yeah, well, you're on it, mate. Do you want to explain those lovely artworks behind you there?
Can you see them properly? I don't know. Yeah, so we have one big part of our brand is actually design. We have a graphic designer who is employed by us purely to create our can art, and she made a little flowing sequence in our cans for. They're creating a flowing sequence on our cans for our birthday beers. So we released 4 birthday beers last week, which were all iterations of hazy IPA. So we had session IPA, an IPA, an oat cream double IPA, and a triple IPA, all in the hazy form. Cool thing about that was we actually used the yeast from the first batch all the way through into the last batch. So we pulled yeast from each tank and added it to the next as we brewed it. So it's pretty cool little creation. And two of them behind us, what are they? One's the IPA and one's the oat cream double IPA. But when you put all the cans together, the artwork actually matches. So they're all a nice little art piece, which is cool.
Looks great there. Moving on, I was going to ask the next question. It's with so many new products coming out from a growing range of breweries across Australia and if not the world, with importation now as well. How do you achieve maximum effect and really make your new product stand out on the shelf when there's possibly another 10 products getting released that same week? How do you make yours really pop? You know, is it engagement with your customers? Is it the complete innovation, or is it the story? What are some of the attributes that you guys look to really make that new product not just hit the shelf and be, I suppose, a one-hit wonder, but really give your brand a boost whilst pointing out the quality and the exception that it's a phenomenal beer? What have we got there? Chris, is that you?
Yeah, sure. I'll take it. Pretty much everything you just said starts. I think a story is, as bad as I am at using social media, we need to use it more ourselves. But, creating the story from when you're first making the beer, what's going into it, people really sort of buy into the brand and get excited and can't wait for that next new beer that might have that chocolate or that different hop in it. Or so even if it's as simple as, taking a little photo just as you're dry hopping a beer with a photo of the brand of the hops going in or something like that. But so I think the story is hugely important. I think the branding of your actual branding itself, we've constantly sort of jumped around and changed branding here and there, but tried to still keep it so people know that it's us when you see it on a shelf, that it does stand out. So I think sort of uniformity in that sense is fairly important. But then also, you got to make sure the beer is everything that they hope it to be. So if they're reading on the back of the can that this is a heavily dry hopped IPA or an imperial stout with vanilla and chocolate, you want to make sure it tastes like there's vanilla and chocolate in that imperial stout. So
good point. Well, I'm going to move on to this one with Greg. Greg, from a marketing perspective, Chris obviously filled us in with the story side of things. How do you go about the execution of that? And when it comes to things like, your go-to-market plan on a new beer?
It's kind of funny. I mean, like the go-to-market plan for me is really your first question, like how does it stand out on shelf? And sort of just to build on Chris's thoughts, it's the story. It's like standing out on shelf. Well, there's two parts to that question. A, there is no shelf anymore. Like as Mitch said, 4 minutes, 12 hectoliter. I mean, like that's the promised land, right? Like the fragmentation and the ability for people to buy beers online is just voracious. So on limited and seasonals, I don't think it's so much about a structured brand integrity idea. It's more about what your brand stands for, which was, I think sort of touching on what Chris was saying is that, your brand and of itself is a bigger idea. And the fact that you do a beer every week, people know that and love that. And that will stand out in their hearts. And they're not on the shelf, they're online and they will cut through and they will find you, which is a slightly different idea to, having an enduring brand that needs to sit, in a dance and has to hit run rates, and in that context, the brand idea, I think, needs to be a bit clearer. It needs to sell, back to what Jane was saying, it needs to more clearly say what it does on the tin, to manage expectations and to celebrate, what that product benefit is going to be, so to help consumers, to help them navigate and make it easy. Because I think that's part of I think craft can be pretty challenging for a lot of people, and I think our role is to make it easy and accessible to bring them in on that journey. And the better we can do that on the packaging alone, that's your go-to-market plan. Like when our guys want for support material, it's John telling a video, it's a trade presenter, but most of the heavy lifting is done in the brand idea. And as Mitch saying, like being really, really design led. I mean, that's a key focus for us. I thought I was going to be a wanker, but I'm so glad that Mitch has said that they got a guy doing it for them. It's just so, like, in this world that we live in, people want nice, curated, customized things. And I think, and you sort of got to, not just express your love and your heart and soul in your beer, but also how you bring it to life. So execution and go to market, it starts with what the tin looks like for me and almost ends. And everything else is probably just amplifies it. But if you don't get that right, it's not worth it.
Yeah, you've definitely got to get them to pick up the tin first of all, don't you, before they can drink it. That's a good point. And we've got minimal time left, so we're going to quickly go around the room, and I'm going to leave this open to whether it's one of your own projects or it's someone else's. But what's a new product that's hit the market that you've been happy with, or that you've seen and you think, geez, they've really nailed that well and done a great job? We'll start off, Jane, yourself.
Just at the time my dog starts barking in the background. When it came through, it was one of my favorites, was Stardust. So lovely little glittery number, which I know people thumb their noses at, but that went viral. So, it's not something that we actually get the opportunity to do, but that thing went all over the world, and we still get asked for it by people from Argentina and wherever else. So that was so much fun. It got to celebrate someone that I loved, which was David Bowie, and Glitter and Sparkles, which is just me.
Oh, Glitter and Sparkles, Louis. Fantastic. Mitch, what about you, mate?
For me, it was probably a beer that we released a little while ago called Yo-Yo Enthusiast. It was our first ever proper oat cream single IPA. And one of the first times we ever used Sabro as a little side hop, and the balance of that beer literally tasted like a coconut, delicious double fruity pina colada in a beer, and it was creamy as hell. So that was an awesome one for us, and hopefully we'll get a couple more out like that in the future.
Fantastic. Chris, what's your this doesn't have to be one of your own beers, it can be someone else's if you want to go that way, but far away, mate.
One of our own would be one of the oat cream IPAs, one of the oat cream double IPAs that we've done. Probably especially the first one for us being, I was just so blown away with how the first one came out. And then the others have probably exceeded it, but the first one sort of blew me away that we could make a beer that good. But that was taking huge amounts of inspiration from a lot of the other half beers that we had when Mr. West had the showcase. I don't know when it was, year and a half ago now, 2 years ago. I just went to that day, and it was the most expensive day I've ever had spending money on beer. I think we spent, me and my wife spent maybe $600 or $700 in about 2 hours of 150 ml pours. It was just ludicrous. We tried every single one. And still probably one of the better beer experiences I've had, other than going to those places. So best experience in Australia for me personally.
Fantastic. I don't know about the budget, but I'm sure that got passed to someone else's department.
Yeah, it is expensive.
And Greg, mate, what about yourself? What's one that's stood out to you? Might have lost Greg there. Is he?
Sorry. Hats off to motorcycle oil for me. I think it's just a really great proposition, really single-minded and clear. And I think it's just what the world needs today, a little bit more rock and roll, sort of a bit unashamed. It's a bit rough and tumble, but it's really easy and, friendly to drink. And I think those guys did a great job of getting it right. I think you can learn a lot from other people who do it right. So, yeah.
Perfect. So juice, and a little bit more rock and roll. That's how we go about NPD. But that literally puts us to the end of the time here, I believe. So thank you very much to Jane from Two Birds, Mitch from Range, Chris from Mr. Banks, and Greg from Brick Lane. It's been really great to hear you guys talk about some of your thoughts on NPD, and what an experienced bunch of people to have in, as we'll say the catchphrase of subject matter experts. Thank you again for tuning in, and obviously keep up the great work, guys, and look forward to catching up with you all for a beer soon. And enjoy your afternoons.
Thanks a lot for that, John, and thanks for everyone for taking part in the discussion. It's such a wide-ranging topic, and I think we covered many bases. If you want to learn more about ingredients and maybe get some ideas, we've got 3 great panels coming up. Tomorrow, starting from 12 o'clock, we've got Yakima Chief Hops, followed by White Labs, and then Barrett Burston Malting. Check out the Good Beer Week website for those 3 and set yourself a reminder on YouTube. But for now, thanks again to the team. Thanks again to Cryer Malt for supporting the Virtual Trade Hub. And look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow. Cheers.